start the share screen first. Share screen. This one. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. First hemisphere. So today we would look at what is the hemisphere on Earth. Now, the hemisphere is the gas, and the gas is held by the gravity. So it is the gravity against solar wind. When sun light up, then you will start emitting solar wind, and that solar wind may blow off the gas, just like the inner planets. The inner planets practically have no atmosphere because the solar wind is so strong that they are being blown off. So what we are looking at here is what are the initial atmosphere on Earth, and then how we get to today's atmosphere. Initially, because the universe will have plenty of hydrogen and helium, so we will assume initially the atmosphere would be mostly hydrogen. Now, hydrogen is typically much lighter, and therefore this very early first atmosphere probably will have been driven off by solar wind when our sun started its nuclear fusion, started entering into its main sequence. And all these gas will be eventually collected by our outer planets, the gas giant, etc. So they still should be in our solar system, but probably it's being collected by our outer gas giants and so forth. So that will be the first atmosphere. At that time, the Earth, after being undergoing the high bombardment period, should be very hot on the surface. The surface might not even have solidified. So again, there won't be any water, etc. So most of the water will have becomes like water vapor, and again, water vapor might have been blown off. So the ground is most likely molten lava. Volcano activity should be quite frequent because we are talking about a pretty early Earth. So all the different parts of Earth haven't settled yet. So there will be quite a lot of volcanoes, and volcanoes typically will emit carbon dioxide, methane, etc. So quite typical emissions similar to what we expect in volcano activities today. The surface temperature will be quite hot, around 230 degrees Celsius. At that time, our sky will not be blue. Now, blue sky is a result of oxygen. At that time, because the atmosphere will most likely be heavier hydrates like methane, carbon dioxide, ammonia, and so forth. So the sky will not be blue. It should be dull red. Something like this. We see the Earth's surface with a lot of flowing molten lava plus constant emission from something like volcanoes. The sky should be a very dull red, and it is very, very hot.
Oh, but where was that photo taken?
This photo is an artist's impression.
Oh, right. Okay.
At that time, there wasn't any photograph, so this is artist's impression.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I thought it might have been from the moon or somewhere.
No, but it is an artist's impression. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then comes the second hemisphere. The second hemisphere will largely be nitrogen, like what we have today, plus a lot of carbon dioxide and inner gases. Inner gases refer to helium, etc. So this will be our second hemisphere. Now, these are emitted by volcano. So it is produced by outgassing from the volcanism. plus some of the gases enter into atmosphere during the late heavy bombardment period. Because at that time, we expect there will be quite a number of rocks around our orbit yet to be collected by Earth. So as Earth move close to these rocks, etc., they are being attracted towards Earth, and to us it looks like asteroids. A majority of the carbon dioxide emission will be dissolved in water and eventually build up as carbonates in the settlements. So although the atmosphere will have a lot of carbon dioxide, the reason that there is already a lot of carbon dioxide in the air is probably because of the supernova that triggered the birth of a solar system. In the supernova, we know that there will be a lot of other different heavy elements being formed in that process. So when it explodes, it will explode together with a large amount of different elements, and these different elements will naturally combine to its more stable form, like carbon dioxide and other gases. So these gases is already available in the universe at that time, especially near the Earth, and they are being collected and form part of the initial gas. But we need water and metal in order to form carbonates. When all these all these debris from the supernova is formed, they might be scattered around. We need some kind of gravity to hold them together and put them in the right condition so that they can form carbonate. So we understand that carbonate will have been born early in the Earth life as our second hemisphere. During the second hemisphere, when carbon dioxide is emitted through volcanism and with presence of water, therefore they will form carbonates. Sorry, I have a bell at the door, so let me see who is coming. Sorry about that. Sorry, I'm back. Okay, I continue. All these water-related settlements will be deposited, so they will be started forming around 3.8 billion years ago. By about 3.4 billion years ago, a lot of this carbon dioxide has been absorbed, and so the atmosphere will then be mostly nitrogen, and that will constitute the more stable second atmosphere. Now, note that during this time, we still haven't got oxygen yet. Because free oxygen probably will exist in very minor quantities during the supernova, because oxygen is such a strong oxidizing agent. So whenever there is sufficient heat, oxygen probably will have been combined with other elements to form oxides. In particular, carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide should be very common. By 3.4 billion years ago, most of the carbon dioxide might have been absorbed. So the atmosphere will be much cooler because we don't have the greenhouse gas. And then later on, due to the influence of life through photosynthesis, then the carbon dioxide is converted into oxygen, and that will be given us what we see today. So during this process, the Earth's surface will start to solidify. As it solidifies, its temperature will start to cool down. As the temperature started to cool down, and as there's at least another reason is, at that time the sun is not as powerful as the sun today. When sun enter into the main sequence, its energy emission is steadily increasing. So By now, Sun is in its middle age, so it is all at about 90% of its maximum energy output. But in the early stage, around 3 billion years ago, the Sun probably is about 20 to 30% weaker than the Sun today. So we have a bit of less sunlight, very little carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Therefore, there is not much greenhouse gas. So the Earth temperature will start cooling. The geological records show that there is a relatively warm surface during the complete early temperature period. And then later on, at around 2.4 billion years ago, it will enter into the glacier period. The whole Earth might be covered by ice. So there are one question: how did Earth at that time manage a climate warm enough for the liquid water and life? If the sun energy put out about 30% lower solar radiance than today, the answer is, of course, the high concentration of greenhouse gas, especially carbon dioxide. But as I mixed up something. Sorry. The carbonate process cannot remove every carbon dioxide. At the early stage, there is a large carbon dioxide, and large carbon dioxide means the Earth is still warm. The glacier period is the result of lowering carbon dioxide when carbon dioxide is being removed by several other mechanisms. I mixed up the mechanism here. Now there are two mechanisms working. One is the carbon dioxide with water plus metal elements to form carbonate. Another process is the carbonate being absorbed by photosynthesis to produce oxygen. When carbon dioxide is being converted into oxygen, then the oxygen will oxidize the remaining metals to form, say, iron oxide and so on. So we will see a lot of oxide formation in that early part of the stage. As carbon dioxide is being removed into oxides, then the oxygen level started increasing. When oxygen level start increasing and carbon dioxide decreasing, the greenhouse gas effect is reducing, and therefore slowly Earth becomes a snowball. The whole Earth is in glacier. Now the problem with glacier is that at the moment we have the two poles being covered by ice. The ice is typically white. That means it reflects sunlight. So the sunlight is being reflected off the two poles. As the ice cover increase, then more and more sunlight are being reflected into the outer space. The Earth, which is dark in color, whether it is land or ocean, getting less surface. That means they're absorbing less energy. Absorbing less energy, that means the Earth started to cool. And as Earth started to cool, it formed more ice. More ice, that means it reflects more sunlight out to the outer space. Earth absorbing even less energy, and therefore it started cooling more. And then this positive reinforcement eventually give us the whole Earth being covered by ice. As the whole Earth is covered by ice, that means a lot of sunlight is being reflected out into the space. And unless the greenhouse gas effect, the greenhouse gas increase, the Earth will remain as a snowball. Because without a greenhouse gas, there's nothing to trap the energy that comes from the sun onto the Earth. Without any trapping, the white color reflects all the energy out, and without a trap, it will never recover. So Earth had been through this snowball a couple of times. Then come the so-called third hemisphere. Now, although the Earth might have been covered by ice, but the tectonic movement underneath is still ongoing. As the tectonic movement gets going, that means the volcanic effect is still happening, and therefore it is emitting carbon dioxide through these volcanic activities. So again, slowly the carbon dioxide build up in the atmosphere, the greenhouse gas amount also build up, and eventually it will start to warm up the Earth. Now, as the Earth warm up, then some of the ice will melt, exposing either the Earth or the ocean. Now, both of these are dark in color, and that means they absorb more energy. As it absorbs more energy, therefore its temperature increases faster. As its temperature increases, more melting, more absorption, and then suddenly Earth will enter into a very hot region, hot time. Almost all ice are melts except at the two poles. Sometimes we might expect the poles not even covered by ice for a big period of time. So the Earth's temperature we can look at and in this way. At the very beginning, it's covered with lava, so it is very high temperature at around 230 degrees Celsius. Then it will slowly cool down. As it slowly cool down, then you will start to see some water on the Earth's surface that will down to below the boiling point of water, maybe let's say 80 degrees, 90 degrees Celsius. We start to see water on ground. In that process, the carbon dioxide is being converted into carbonate, and therefore the greenhouse effects started to decrease. As greenhouse effect started to decrease, the temperature started to drop. As the temperature started to drop, ice started to form, and the more ice is formed, the more energy is being reflected out to the space, and therefore it absorbs less energy and more ice is formed, and eventually the Earth becomes a snowball. Then, because of the volcanic activities underneath all the tectonic plates, these volcanic activities release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The atmosphere started to build up its greenhouse gas. As the greenhouse gas built up, then it started to trap the energy. When it trapped energy, the ice started to melt. When the ice melts, it exposes ocean or earth, which is dark in color, and therefore it absorbs more solar radiation. As it absorbs more solar radiation, the melting accelerates, and eventually it overshoots into the more almost back to 50 degrees, etc., into the atmosphere. So the Earth's atmosphere has been fluctuating between, after the initial time, has been fluctuating between almost 50 degrees to minus 20, 30 degrees during that fluctuation. And in that situation, during that process, there's oxygen haven't played a role yet, because we need photosynthesis to start producing oxygen. So when the snowball ice melted, there's still a lot of carbon dioxide in the air. Some of the organisms started to use the carbon dioxide as an energy source to produce its material, photosynthesis. Then it started producing oxygen. As it started producing oxygen, it's also removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And the oxygen produced will oxidize with the remaining metals to form oxides, typically iron oxides. So the iron oxide will be formed around that time. So until about 2.4 billion years ago, there will not be free oxygen in the atmosphere. But the plant is still growing. As the plant grows, it continues to produce oxygen. Eventually, all the metals have been oxidized. We have oxygen left. So the oxygen started building up in the atmosphere. That's called the Great Oxygenation event. This event suggests that the free oxygen was first produced by by organic reactions with organisms initially without a very clear membrane of its DNAs or RNAs is genetic material, and later the genetic material will be enclosed and to form the eukaryotic organisms. So this is photosynthesis. These organisms must have lived long before the great oxygenation event, because oxygen is produced by these organisms. So probably they have lived before the oxygenation event for quite some time, when they are converting carbon dioxide into oxygen, and this new form oxygen is being used up by the metal to form oxides, and therefore eventually when all the oxides are gone, all the metals are converted into oxides, then we started to have oxygen remaining in the atmosphere. This is a photo of the layer of iron oxide. The iron oxide is in layers. Typically, this is because of the seasoning on Earth. We know that in the warmer season, plants grow better, and when the plants grow better, it produces more oxygen, and therefore we will see a very clear band of oxides formed. And then when Earth entered into the when the area where there is life entered into the winter season, the life form decrease its activity, oxygen produces less, and therefore we will see a less no oxygen band. So in the settlements, we see all these oxides are in layers, and typically each layer represents 1 year. And this is the so-called mass rusting. All the iron started to become rust.
Albert, you're talking about taking 1 year. Was a year the same length as it is today?
Approximately the same. I think we were rotating a bit faster at that time, so it will be a shorter year than we are today, but will be approximately the same.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, oxygen started to persist, remain in the atmosphere, initially in small quantities, and then later on get more and more. So oxygen started to accumulate. The oxygen accumulation enabled different kinds of life. So in next week we will talk about how life started. We expect life. We assume life started in the ocean floor, near what they call the vents, where there's a little bit of gas leaking from inside of the earth through a little vent, and the vent bubble up through the water. And in that region, we at the moment we can still see a lot of organisms starting. So we believe life started in that way. Now these life forms do not use oxygen as its main mechanism for growth. They are anaerobic, doesn't use oxygen, and oxygen to them is a poisonous gas. So as some plants started to have photosynthesis, a lot of other anaerobic organisms will have died because they will be poisoned by oxygen. But at the same time, another kind of organisms which depends on oxygen started to appear, and that give us the animal kingdom that we see today. So before that, we believe that the life form will only be plants or microorganisms. So the initial microorganisms will be anaerobic, doesn't use oxygen. Then some of them is able to do photosynthesis. They produce oxygen. The oxygen kill off a lot of these anaerobic organisms, but provide a ecological niches for other organisms to exist which use oxygen. Now, this is parts photo, parts artist's imagination. The little round dots there can still be found in Western Australia. These round rocks, and the rest of it is artist's impression. They are trying to use some of the information from today and combine with the imagination to think about what Earth would look like when oxygen is not available. Now the sky is now blue. Now blue sky means in the sky there's minimum amount of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide level will drop to 10-20%, much less than the previous was. And the oxygen level might have risen to about 10 to 20%. At the moment, the oxygen level is about 27%. But once upon a time, oxygen level has been as high as almost 40%. But we are looking at here is at the stage the oxygen level might be the same as what we will see today. So the sky color is about the same as our sky. There are still quite a bit of volcanic activities, so we can see in the background there's some volcanoes still spitting out some gas. But in the foreground, there's a very interesting rock. Now, these rocks are formed by dead plant materials. So on the surface is the growing layer of a organism which will do photosynthesis. As the water under the tide rush up and down over the surface of this roundish rock, then the organism there get the water from the seawater, and you get the sun, and you undergo photosynthesis to grow a new layer of the material, which is on top of the last generation. So over time, layers of these organisms form these rocks. So these rocks are organic. They are not inorganic rocks. They are formed by layers and layers of organic material which undergo photosynthesis. Each time the tide runs over them, they get some water and get some sunlight, do photosynthesis, produce the next generation organisms which is on top of the previous generation, and cover it up and up and up, eventually build up all these roundish rocks. And they can be found in Western Australia, but I haven't been able to go to Western Australia to take a photo for myself. But anyone going to Western Australia, you might like to take a photo of this. It still exists today according to the information I have. The result of this oxygenation of the atmosphere, as I said, is first of all, reduce the methane gas and the carbon dioxide, and triggering a glacier and other snowball Earth. The increased oxygen concentration provided new opportunities for biological diversification. and therefore we see a lot of other creatures, and these biological organisms also modify the Earth's surface in profound ways. As more and more oxygen is produced, then the concentration of oxygen in the higher level of the atmosphere is able to absorb energy from sun and dissociate, and then we combine into ozone. Oxygen is O2, two atoms of oxygen to form one molecule of oxygen. Ozone is three oxygen molecules. Three oxygen atoms. Ozone has the characteristics of blocking out ultraviolet light, and therefore Earth's surface now is protected from ultraviolet light, and life form can start, because ultraviolet light is very damaging for all the genetic materials. When the ultraviolet light is strong, the membrane holding up the genetic material will be broken down by the ultraviolet light, and therefore the genetic material will get broken up. When the genetic material get broken up, they will be mixed to form a next generation of organism quite different from the previous generation, because there is a lot of mixing of all these genetic components. But when the ultraviolet light is being blocked out, then the genetic material can be protected much better, and therefore we started to see different species started to form. A species carries most of the genetic characteristics of its parent. When the ultraviolet light is strong, the genetic pieces are being broken down, and we combine in many different ways, and therefore the next generation will be quite different from the previous generation. But once you can protect your genetic sequence, then the next generation will be very similar to the original original organism, and therefore we started to see different kinds of organisms started to form. So a lot of genetic functions, for example photosynthesis, for example using different parts of other organisms products as energy. For us, we use glucose, a kind of organic material, as our energy for our cells. All these mechanisms was initially created by some genetic components. So in the initial change of genetic components will be pretty random. It's a mixing of different genetic components, because there's a lot of ultraviolet light breaking down the surface. But once the ultraviolet light is being blocked out, then a package of genetic material will remain quite stable, and that package will develop into a species of life. So that's what we believe it will have been. Okay, this diagram shows you the approximate concentration of oxygen. This is parts per percentage. Okay, so 0 is now, and then 4.567 is the beginning of the solar system. So we see that for almost half of the time, there's not much oxygen in the atmosphere. Then about a little bit, about 2.4 billion years ago, the red line started to rise up. It shoot into a region, and then as the oxygen increase, then the Earth entered into the snowball region. So we see the blue region there. The blue region represents the Earth being covered by ice almost. But at that time, algae started to form. Algae still can live under the ice. The glaciation will stop because of volcanic activities. So eventually, about 800 million years ago, then the Earth entered into the warmer period. The ice disappeared and entered into the yellow region. In the yellow region, we see that the oxygen levels have spiked at least 2 times. The latest spike is when all our animals are huge in the time of the dinosaurs. Then I will explain why there is a spike like that. But anyway, what we cover today is looking at the atmosphere and basically describe this diagram. From the early part, in the pink region, the atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide, methane, and so forth. Huge amount of greenhouse gas. The surface temperatures will be very high, and then eventually some organisms started to produce oxygen at around 2.5 billion years ago. So the red line started to appear. Initially, there will be the initial oxidation events where the oxygen being absorbed by the metals to form oxides. But when that event finished, the continual production of oxygen will increase the atmospheric oxygen level. So the oxygen level shoot up. As the oxygen level shoot up, and there's nothing to remove the oxygen from the atmosphere. So it will move up and up and up until the whole Earth is covered by ice. As the whole Earth is covered by ice, the photosynthesis activity decrease. Volcanic activity increase. So the oxygen level slowly drop down. And then eventually drops so much that it can escape from the ice world. When it escaped, then the plant started to grow again, produce more oxygen, and then another ice period, go down again, and then up again, eventually settle into the current stable region at around 20%, 21% oxygen. Okay, that's for today. Question? Anyone? Let me stop the screen sharing.
Albert, we now know a little bit about the atmosphere on Mars. How does that compare with the various different, or is there a comparison between the Martian atmosphere and some of the earlier Earth's atmospheres?
We will
second.
Yeah, I think we will expect the early atmosphere will be very similar to the current Martian atmosphere. Will be similar. But
first or second?
Probably second. The first will have blown away. Mars is lighter than us. It's smaller than Earth, and therefore it doesn't have as large a gravity to hold the gas. Therefore, its atmosphere is much thinner than us. That's number one. And number two, the solar wind will have blown off all the lighter elements. So it will be most likely our second atmosphere. More similar to that. But again, Mars is so much smaller. So its volcanic activities has now all stopped. Whereas we still have volcanic activities. So our atmosphere is still subject to emission from our volcanoes into the atmosphere, whereas Mars should have stopped it. So Mars atmosphere becomes a very good examples for us to study our second atmosphere. Probably looks like that. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Any other question? No,
The solar wind, that's highly ionized, isn't it? It's
the
makes the
solar
aurora.
wind is ionized, yes, and because Earth is also magnetic and there has a magnetic field, and therefore the ions will be blown almost away from the Earth. So that is why we see the what's that aurora? Is that called aurora in our South Pole and North Pole?
Mm.
That is because of the solar wind being ion flowing into our magnetic field and being um, swirl around the charge being moved around, and because of that it is radiating energy, and that's our aurora.
So when it robbed the Earth of atmosphere, that was just due to the momentum of the
Yeah, a
solar
lot is
wind,
due to the
not
momentum.
some ionic
Yeah,
interaction,
yeah.
was it? Yeah.
Of course, some
Okay.
of them is being reflected by the magnetic field, but still some of them will be bouncing directly onto our atmosphere.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
Thank you.
also again is depending on the formation of our iron core or iron core, the initially iron will be scattered all around our Earth, so it will not have a strong magnetic field. But iron being
Okay.
heavy, and therefore it will migrate to the middle of our Earth, and then the more concentrated are, the stronger the magnetic field, and therefore eventually the magnetic field of Earth build up.
Mm. Okay.
Any other question? Is that too much? Next time we will look at how life might have started.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fun.
That will be fun. And then after that, we will look at some of the spikes in the oxygen level and what is the implication of that.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that'll be
So
good fun.
if you look at the diagram, today we almost go through half of the Earth's history. We are now with oxygen now. So we'll start looking at but I will also have one on the snowball Earth, because that is very interesting itself. How we get out of the snowball Earth, how long it takes, what happened to the temperature, because the diagram we show is very much a board diagram. We will closing in a bit more.
Albert, another question, and you may have covered this before I rejoined the class. Did the planets form in the order that they are now from the sun?
Yep.
Or
most likely,
right.
Most likely, except we have been hit by something the size of Mars, which eventually becomes our moon. So there was another large rock almost the size of Mars near Earth's orbit, and then eventually these two collided and then give us the moon. Other than that, most of the planets fall in situ in the place they were.
I always thought the moon had split off from the Earth.
Yeah, the kind of, because we were bombarded by very large rock, almost the size of Mars, very large, and of course that caused a lot of energy on Earth, and therefore a lot of material is being evaporated into the Earth's nearby, and all these things started collate together to form our moon, and therefore the moon is quite similar to us, but not exactly. It has a smaller density than us because it only get the material from our surface rather than the whole Earth. The Mars didn't penetrate Earth. It smashes on the Earth's surface and then cause a lot of surface material being splits into the in the surrounding area, and this surrounding area eventually collate into moon. So it got our less heavy components, but the most heavy components is in the middle of our Earth, which that thing didn't penetrate, and therefore it doesn't reject into the nearby. So moon is a bit less dense than us, but it's similar to us in terms of its surface characteristics and our surface characteristics. But again, because a moon doesn't have an atmosphere, so it doesn't have weathering. Weather depends on the atmosphere, the water, the water cycle, the air cycle, etc., which is weather. But moon doesn't have a thick atmosphere. Even if it has an atmosphere, it will be very thin, and therefore it doesn't have weathering. So what we see on moon's surface will be what our Earth had experienced when in the early stage, about the time after the moon is formed until we escape from the heavy bombardment period. So all the craters that's formed on moon is due to all the different asteroids hitting on the moon. So our Earth being larger, that means we will attract more. So we will be hit by more asteroids than moon. But you look at the moon, it's almost no part is not hit by an asteroid. So we can imagine we are also being hit by asteroids almost on every surface.
Have we ever heard hold so many moons at one stage?
Hold so many what?
Moons.
Oh, we only have one. The initial moon will be very small, different fragments, but these fragments eventually collate into our moon today. So initially there will be a lot of little rocks rather than moon, but eventually all this collided into one big moon. Because again, it's gravity. The gravity attracts all the smaller one into one big one. But Earth only got one moon, whereas in some of the large gas giants, they have many moons.
Yeah. And are you going to start with single cells for the first life?
Yeah, when we talk about beginning of life, we will start with very simple life form, and then we'll go into the complex life form, because life is started that way. So up to now, the whole big history is about how complexity develops from simplicity. Remember, at the very beginning, the universe is pretty simple. It's just huge energy, and then the energy cool down to form the simplest elements, hydrogen and helium. And then through the evolution of stars, produce different elements, and then with supernova, these different elements is trigger another generation of stars like our sun, and then we come to Earth. So the whole story is basically from simplicity to complexity. So far, we still have a pretty simple Earth at the moment. After the glaciation period, Earth will probably have still very simple life form, probably even single cell. Maybe not even a cell, but we will see next time.
Do you think that the Greenland's those glaciers, and it's supposed still consists of billion years ago, those small, simple one?
Yeah, at the very deep one. Yeah, probably. Actually, at the moment, we still can see in the ocean vents very simple life form yet. Yeah, we can still see it today.
Amoebas.
Yeah, it's just trying to find them, but they are still there. Because
that's I did worry about the climate change and the recent glaciers melting. And those some who have been trapped underneath for a billion years ago, and suddenly this will be occur from the on our surface.
Yeah, one of the most dangerous thing is the melting of the thermal frost, permanent frost. If that melts, then a lot of the gas trapped underneath that frost will be released into the atmosphere, and this gas most likely is methane, and methane is a stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So if that is released, then we will enter into a warm period. And that warm period, because life at the moment is very well balanced to the current temperature. If the temperature change a little bit, a lot of life form will not be able to survive. The more complex a life form is, the more specific the environment must be in order for the life form to cope. The simpler life form can cope with larger range of environmental conditions. The more sophisticated, the smaller the range of environmental difference. For example, like us, we live in this sea level, at this oxygen level. If we go up to high mountains, like let's say 3,000 meters, then we will feel uncomfortable because the oxygen level there is just a few percentage lower than what we expect. Our body cannot cope with it.
Yeah.
Of course, many people can, but a lot of us can't cope. That's the high altitude. Okay, so we are now very fine-tuned to the current conditions. If the current conditions deviate a little bit, we would suffer very severe impact. That is the problem at the moment. The Earth had to be balanced very well for us to survive. A little change in temperature will cause a lot of damage to us. That's the problem of climate change.
And beside that one, also, all the sea level will be increased.
Yep, the sea level will increase. Now,
So
we
many
build
land will
our cities near the seashore. So if the sea level increase, our cities will be emerged. Not much. If the sea level increase by say 10 meters, a lot of big cities will be covered in water.
10% of the land will be disappear.
Yeah, because we are in such a fine balance at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, thank you, and we will see you in China today.
Thank you, Albert. Albert, just before you turn off,
yeah,
Sam, can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
I am a collector of maps, and I'm interested in the map that you have on the wall behind you. Where is that?
Which map? Map?
Map, but on the wall behind Sam.
This one?
Not you, Albert. Sam.
Sam.
Oh,
yeah.
Am I?
That.
Am I?
Yes. That.
Where is it?
The map on top of your red light.
On top of my light?
Red light in the back. On the back.
Oh, that is the pictures. That is what is struck, the red construct with a pine. That is not a map. The map, I have a map. Can you see that?
No. But
yeah,
it looks. The one just behind you looks very much like a map.
No.
What did you say it was?
It's not a map.
It's a picture.
It's a picture. It's a.
Oh, right. Okay. I beg your pardon.
Still, the guy from the China.
Oh, yeah.
It's a silk thread. And on the flower, the pine tree, and then
really?
the stalk.
Chinese
from
Chinese
distance,
painting.
Yeah, it looks quite different from a distance.
Yeah, this is a Chinese
Just for your
painting.
interest.
Video?
Oh, right.
Ah.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, quite different. Oh, right. Goodness gracious.
I have a map, but my map will be keep it away. I don't think so. I will keep it up from here.
Not to, the map behind me, incidentally, is Melbourne in the 1890s. At the end of the land boom caused by the gold rush and just before the depression of the 1890s.
Okay.
But yeah, look,
20 years ago, National Geographic produced a good the old antique one, and that's they distribute to all the subscribers.
Right.
So you just go down there and have a look.
That's not the map behind me is not a reproduction. That's an original.
Okay. Anyway, catch you in China today.
I'll switch over. I'll see you in a couple of seconds again, Albert.
Yeah. Okay. See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.